That noise? That scritchy, scratchy noise? That's the sound of drawing a bear. A special and famous bear. Oh, you know the Berenstain Bear. Uh-huh, but what's a Berenstain? Well, here's one. A Stan. And here's another. A Jan. From the very start, Jan and Stan Berenstain worked as a team. As Jan says,
many people at work are working as teams in many factories, in many offices, so it makes sense that two individuals can also work as a team.
And it also makes it possible to take more naps, which is something I like to do a lot.
And when did the teamwork begin?
Stan and I picked each other out our very first day of art school by our work. We didn't see who was attached to the work at the time. We were going around looking at the drawings, and I admired a drawing he had done, which was the head of Alexander. I particularly was impressed that he filled in the shadows.
I had learned early that the way to disguise a weak drawing was to put a lot of shadow on it.
Jan and Stan discovered later that they were both born in Philadelphia. As very young children, they had even lived near each other in the same part of the city. But they went to different elementary schools.
And we also went to different high schools. I had moved to the suburb. If I had not moved out of that section of the city, I would have ended up in the same high school. We would have both competed for the same art scholarship, and we would have hated each other.
That's
because
right.
Only one of us would have won.
We apparently began drawing when we were tiny little kids.
I love to draw cartoons. I remember a local cleaner was called the Orange Cleaners, and I had this little girl carrying into the Orange Cleaners a bag of dirty oranges and saying, "How much for a dozen?"
But it wasn't cartoons Jan was drawing when they met in that class at the Philadelphia College of Art.
Jan chose to draw a very, very difficult full figure, and I was impressed. And also I was impressed by Jan when I put her together with the drawing.
Well, we got to sitting beside each other in our drawing classes, and I think we started drawing on each other's work then. We figured, this is good.
The beginning of a partnership. This happened just before the United States got into World War II, and I was taken into the Army. I was in the Army for about 3.5 years, and I was a medical artist. My particular job was to observe surgical operations, and I did a drawing record of each operation. This typical drawing has to do with a soldier whose face was wounded and some corrective surgery was done. And I drew lots of pictures of just my soldier friends. Here's a fellow I was a very close friend with. Here's somebody I never saw before or after. I just drew him in a railroad station. Meanwhile, Jan was still at art school and doing some terrific things.
I was taking teacher training, which gave us mini courses in almost every aspect of art training, jewelry and metal work. And I was getting a lot of skills that I thought would be very good in war work.
Many women were discovering at that time that they had or could develop such skills.
I became a riveter, went to riveting school.
And joined a class celebration when the training was completed.
And worked in a factory in Philadelphia making for the Navy the center wing section of the PBY flying boat. At the same time, Stan kept painting. And we have a really nice self-portrait.
I forget all that. I got out of the Army, Jan and I had planned to get married, and we did as soon as I got out of the Army. We lived over a store of my father's, a ramshackle, drafty, crazy place with a funny little back porch, and we went into the cartoon business. I had sold a couple cartoons to a magazine called the Saturday Review of Literature. I figured, boy, this is going to be easy. You just draw a cartoon and send them in, they buy them. But it wasn't easy. We did 17 to 20 cartoons every week for a whole year and didn't sell a single cartoon. At the end of the year, we finally broke into the big magazine market.
The big national
The general magazines.
family magazines like Collier's. We did a scene of a schoolyard at recess, and they got a lot of fan mail about that. And they asked us to do more. Well, we did Saturday matinee next. The matinee audience in a movie house on Saturday before the show starts.
The matinees were special long Saturday afternoon shows for children.
That went on to the cover.
And they got bushels and bushels of mail. We did maybe 15 to 20 covers for Collier.
We had some financial success, and we built a house in the suburb of Philadelphia.
Where the Berenstain boys, Leo and Michael, were born.
When our children were learning to read, we knew because they were very involved with our cartoons that they enjoyed humor. And at that time, there were not many books of humor for children, illustrated with cartoon drawings. And we thought we were qualified to try.
The next question was, well, what will our children's books be about? Now, at that time, we had established in McCall's magazine the People family. Jan said, if we're going to do children's books, why don't we simply do an animal family? And we did bears. One reason we did bears is that when we were in art school together, every week we'd go draw animals at the zoo. And it's kind of difficult because the animals move around. Now, the bears were in rather small cages, which was unfortunate for the bears, so they circled and circled and circled. And if you stood there, you could catch them in the same position very easily simply by keeping your eyes open. We got to be very good bear drawers.
They stood up a lot and were wonderful to draw and fun to put clothes on.
That's how the bear family was born. And where are they going to live? Well, we thought the cave wouldn't be very interesting. So we decided to have them live in this crazy, funny tree. And we're so glad we did because we get lots of mail from children. And much of the mail either mentions or depicts the bear's treehouse. And that pleases us a lot.
Much of the mail also asks questions, and one of them is, how do you write the bear books?
They get written in various ways. Sometimes the idea will be Jan's, and she'll make the first stab at writing it, and then perhaps she'll show it to me. And then often it's turned around. I'll get the idea and do the first draft, and Jan will rework my draft. It's back and forth.
We did several stories of the family before Sister was born that were typical family experiences, like teaching how to ride a two-wheeler, having a family picnic, going camping, and having a vacation at the shore. And then we did the story of Mama becoming pregnant and having a baby. And that was the arrival of Sister in the family.
In their first-time books, Jan and Stan write about experiences everyone has, like going to the doctor or dentist, having a sitter, or moving.
Many teams, including husband and wife teams, write together. There aren't very many husband and wife teams that draw together, and we're often asked how we do it. I usually do the first layout, which is a rough layout. The next stage is Janice's. She takes my rough layout and does a very fully developed, careful drawing. This is what we submit to our editor. And then usually Jan does a final pencil drawing, and then I do the inking, and then we share the coloring job.
On Stan's rough drawings, he has usually indicated facial expressions, and I may work on it, and if I can't get it, I'll go back to him because he's very good at facial expressions.
Stan says Jan is just as good. They can both draw. A pleased bear. A surprised bear. A smug-looking bear. An angry bear. An embarrassed bear. A happy bear.
And we don't just draw bears. After all, the bears live in a place where there are a lot of other animals and a lot of other kinds of life, like trees and flowers, insects.
Rocks? Are rocks a kind of life?
One of the questions we were asked once was, how do you draw water? And we found that the way we draw water is to look at it a lot.
And draw what you see.
On almost every wall of the Berenstain home are paintings that Jan and Stan have done over the years.
Most of them are Stan's. He's done most of the landscapes around the house.
This painting of the church on a beach. It's not a work of imagination. There happened to be a church on a beach.
Stan loves seascapes. Jan has always liked to paint people. And of course, that included Stan.
This painting of Jan's I'm very fond of, partly because it's a painting of our two kids together. They look like brothers, but they look very different.
That's a study from life. I just enjoyed studying the differences between these two boys 4 years apart and the similarities.
Both our sons were interested in drawing, but our older son, Leo, became a scientist.
Leo and his wife went to Borneo to study monkeys shortly after this picture was taken.
Our younger son, Michael, became an author-illustrator of children's books. We think his books are wonderful.
The Berenstain home lies in rolling hill country in Pennsylvania.
We enjoy the outdoors very much, particularly the outdoors right outside of our house, because we have a marvelous little woods behind our house. In fact, this woods is the place where a mother deer has had her fawns about 3 years in a row.
One of our favorite outdoors activities is looking. We're great lookers.
Jan's a big field glass user.
Jan and Stan, who are together a lot, are sometimes asked, do they get into arguments? Do they fight?
The answer is we don't get into very many arguments, and we never really fight.
If we have a disagreement about a project we're working on, and one feels very strongly, we just drop it.
We once got a letter from a youngster about how he liked the Bears, and at the end he said, by the way, how are you two getting along? If he's looking at this, we're getting along fine.